In this training, we are going to be breaking down how to properly set up a business address so that you're actually able to get access to business credit the right way and avoid denials. This is one of the biggest things that I see holding entrepreneurs back, especially when we start working with them. They think that just because they have a virtual office address set up, or just because they may be paid for a registered agent, that everything is good to go. But we are actually going to be addressing how to properly set it up and how to run a business address audit. So in the event that you do get denied, you're able to go back in, fix that constraint, and then get the funding that you need for your business. So let's get right into it. All right, so let's break down how to properly set up a business address. So here's what we're going to cover: the different types of business addresses that you can use, which type of business addresses you possibly should be using specific to your business or to your industry, since not all business addresses are created equal. How to set up your business address, again, properly specific to your business. How having the wrong virtual office address or the wrong or using the wrong registered agent can actually get you flagged and denied for credit lines altogether. And how to run a quick business address audit to make sure that the address that you're using and that you're buying is legit. So let's first dive into how to properly set up a business address. Now, when you're setting up a business entity, your address, you want to have two different types of addresses, right? You want to have the address for the owner, and then you also want to have the address for the business, right? But taking it a step further, because there's like a second or a like a subcategory of addresses. You have the physical address for the business. This is where you conduct the business. This is where you actually maybe manufacture the products. This is maybe the storefronts. This is maybe, if you are in consulting, this is where clients come to meet with you. That's the physical location. And then you have the mailing address. Again, this is more so where the business is going to receive its mail. So if maybe you have a registered agent, then you're familiar with this, because you know that that's not necessarily where you conduct business. That's where your business receives its correspondence. That's where your business receives, maybe if you apply for a credit card, they'll possibly receive it there, and then they'll get it, and then they'll forward it over to you, right? You want to pay attention to both those key differences, and you also want to make sure that you're not using your physical address, or rather your personal address, as your business address, because that can actually cause a denial with certain banks and certain credit unions, because they're going to say, okay, wait a minute, this person or this business that's applying, they don't necessarily have all of their ducks in a row. And so because of that, they then, again, remember what we talked about applications in other videos, is they'll look at your application and then they'll kind of like downgrade it into a higher risk type of lendee, or into a higher risk type of file. Now, there's really three different addresses that you can use. I want to run through that right now. And again, this is all going to be dependent off of the type of business that you do. So it's not a one size fits all. You want to make sure that you're picking an address that's congruent, that's aligned, and that actually makes sense for your line of work. Don't get a virtual office address just because you see everyone else talking about it, right? Don't use your home address just because you saw it work for someone else. Don't go out and get into an expensive lease for a building if you're maybe taking the brick and mortar route, either a lease or if you're trying to buy a property, just because it worked for someone else, right? You want to make sure that it's going to work specific for you and your business. And so brick and mortar location is the first type of address that we're going to be breaking down. So you have your brick and mortar location, you have your virtual office address, and then you have your home-based business address. Now, again, you can use a registered agent, but I prefer that you actually use your own address, because you have more control over what's happening, not just with the business, but also the correspondence that you're getting. And if there's maybe an issue with that address altogether, you'll see what I mean here in a little bit. So let's first dive into a home-based business address. Now, you can use a home-based business address if your city or your state allows you to operate from a residential location. We were dealing with an auto, what was it? It was an auto dealer, and he was using his home-based business address every time he went out and every time he went out to apply for funding before he started working with us. And so what ended up happening was he got to the point where he just started getting denial after denial after denial. He had a 780 plus credit score, didn't have many hard inquiries. had a pretty decent business credit profile already set up, had already been in business for 6 years. And so when he came to us, he says, man, what's going on? Like, I feel like everything is lined up. And what ended up happening was we said, okay, let's run a quick business address audit and let's see where you're conducting business. And so the state that he was conducting business in didn't actually allow that line of work to be conducted from a house, right? It needed to be either on a lot, it needed to be in a commercial type setting. So in that case, it made sense for him to use an actual brick and mortar location, which he obviously went out, made that change, and then was able to get the funding that he needed. Now, you may necessarily need that for your business. You may be just fine with a home-based business address, but if you're running into this and you're wondering, wait a minute, I've seen other people get approved using a home-based business address. We see it all the time with clients that are getting six-figure funding rounds for their businesses, 100K business lines of credit, just using a home-based business address. But again, it's going to be dependent off of the type of business that you do. And so you're going to be, again, you must be able to complete operations from your home if you're going to use a home-based business address. Now, this is not recommended if you're running a business that's normally operated from a storefront, a commercial space, or a brick and mortar location, kind of like what we just finished mentioning now. So these are things like automotive sales, stores, suppliers, appliances, healthcare, restaurants, things like that. You want to use either a virtual office address or you want to use an actual brick and mortar location. Now, home-based business addresses do work for funding when the business is, again, compliant and when you're able to connect with a business banker to let them know how, in fact, you're operating from your house. Hey, I have an actual home studio. I have a home office where either clients email me their documents whenever we're helping them out during a consultation, or if I'm recording content for social media, I have a section of my house that I just use as a podcast setup, that I just use for content creation to attract more leads into our funnel. Whatever that is, you want to be able to articulate that to the business banker that you work with, which is one of the things that we're always telling our clients is you want to, number one, first and foremost, actually know the business that you're in, and you want to be able to articulate it to the business bankers that you're working with. And then number two, apart from knowing your business, knowing your numbers, you want to have your story straight. And you want to say, okay, this is the reason why I operate my business out of my house, because they're then able to throw that into the underwriting process and justify why it is that you're using a home-based business address. I wanted to throw that on here before moving forward, because I know that there's a lot of people out there where they'll say, oh, you should only be using a virtual office address, or you should only be using a brick and mortar location, right? You can still use your home-based business address and get approved for a significant amount of funding. We see that all the time. It just has to make sense for your business. Now, keep in mind that this will be public record. So be mindful of that. If you do decide to take the home-based business route, right? Outside of you applying at a bank, because that information isn't going to be shared publicly. So whatever you put on a business credit application or whatever you share with the banker by law, that's not going to be public. But what is going to be public is you using that address in your Secretary of State. You using that address to register your business, to get your licenses. Now, like, for the love of God, do not use any type of P.O. boxes, any type of box rentals, anything that looks like it's coming from a post office. You want to stay away from those. Now, I will say this: when it comes to virtual office addresses, if an address has a PMB with the little pound sign or with the number sign on it that stands for private mailbox number, you immediately want to change the address. We had a client out of Miami where he had it was a reputable source. I believe it was either Reach or Opus. And you guys know that they're pretty solid when it comes to selling virtual office addresses, right? But in front of their address, they actually had a PMB number. And that PMB number was throwing off the application completely because, again, it didn't look like it was a legitimate place of work in the eyes or to the eyes of the lender. So we said, dude, you're going to want to change that before you submit another application for another credit line or before you meet with another business banker, because you're going to be spinning your wheels. Lo and behold, they made that change and they were off to the races, right? So keep that in mind. Outside of it just being a P.O. box, which again is not what you want, you also want to pay attention to the PMB number if your address has that, regardless whether it's coming from Regis, Opus, or any iPostal, any of these virtual office addresses. Now, when it comes to virtual office addresses, here's what you want to pay attention to. If you don't have a storefront location, a brick and mortar, or if you work from home, but again, you maybe want to keep things a bit more private, then my recommendation, which is what I typically tell my clients, a virtual office may be a good look for you, again, if it makes sense for your business. Now, this is going to allow you to open up a business without having to take on the load of having a lease, big rent hanging over your head, just overhead expenses that you don't need, right? Especially when you're starting out, this is going to be a good look, a good start for you. Now, you can also use this to set up your business for future funding options, since you're able to select where the business is located. Here's what I mean by that. Sometimes smaller banks are going to want to see your business within a 40 to 50 mile radius. Like we see this all the time, especially with small banks, especially with small credit unions. They want to make sure that your business is located. Let's say if I'm in Orlando, so if I am in the heart of Orlando and a bank that I'm trying to go to is, let's say 50 miles from here. So I'll drop, I don't know, I'll drop a town. Let's say Daytona. That's over 50 miles. That bank is only located in Daytona. Then if my address is located, let's say in the heart of Orlando, they're going to map it out and they're going to say, hey, we can't technically take on your business because we only want to fund local businesses. And rightfully so. That's how they keep the local economy running. Now, if you're someone that maybe you do business or maybe you live in a rural area and all the banks that you know is in a bank is at a bank, dense populated area, let's say 20 miles into the city or 20 miles into town, and like in that area you'll have 20, 30 different banks that you can maybe shop through. That's when it makes sense, even though you're technically operating your business from the comfort of your home. That's when it makes sense for you to get a virtual office address so that you can plop it in the middle of, let's say, the heart of that town. And so that way, whenever a bank goes to pull up your address, even though you technically live 30, 40 miles from there, they say, oh, your office or your place of business is only really 5 to 10 miles from here, right? So it's within the radius. It's within the area of where they actually want to fund. Now, again, by selecting a virtual office address location in a bank dense populated area, you're able to access lending institutions because you now meet their criteria. That's a major point, and it really turns the wheel for a lot of people that get stuck in funding just off of that one fix. Because remember, now you have more options. Now you're not just subject to like 2 or 3 banks. Now the world becomes your oyster. Now, here is what you can receive with a virtual business office. Because a lot of people say, well, Irv, if I get myself a virtual business office, like, is it just to apply for credit lines? No. Like, you can use it for all of this, like, and some, right? So you're going to be receiving corporate mail. So this is what the company can use when applying for business credit accounts. So the corporate mail that you get, if it's maybe documents that you're going to get, licenses. If maybe you live outside of the area, you can have that stuff forwarded over to your main address. Again, remember, the whole point of this is a part of just the funding. Some people like to be private. I'm one of those guys, right? Where I like for my stuff to be private. You don't want to know where you live, right? You want to be careful with this type of stuff, especially in the day and age where we live today. And so, company phone number, you can use that with a virtual office building or with a virtual business office. They tend to sell those in packages. You have a live receptionist that can answer the calls for you. You have a company fax number. You have a voicemail converted to an email, which is always pretty cool. Again, I'm giving you these. Always do your due diligence. There's different packages across the board. They typically start at right around $39, depending on where you live in the country. Go up to as high as $200, maybe even $300 if you're going to be using it to maybe rent out a little space where you can go there, have your little cubicle, and actually work out of. Premium call forwarding. And then you can use, again, offices, furniture, meeting rooms. Some of them have podcasting stations, content rooms, which is really cool. A lot of that stuff, especially out here in Orlando, we have what I think it's called WeWorks. So WeWorks is pretty cool. If you're a big networker, you can always go out there, have some coffee, hang out, and obviously socialize with other like-minded individuals and business owners. But if the whole purpose of this is just so that you can get funding, just getting the bare bones basic, which is the business address, is going to do the job. Everything else that I just mentioned here is just icing on the cake. Now, note, true virtual offices have a physical location. I'm going to say that again. True virtual offices have a physical location. So when you're looking at an address, you want it to look like it's an actual business address or an actual storefront, right? This is important because banks, lenders, underwriters, they're going to plug this information into the algorithm. Sometimes, if I'm being honest with you, they're just going to flat out Google it, and they're just going to see, okay, does it look like a physical location? Does it look like an actual office, or is it like behind somebody's tire shop, or is it like a veterinarian office or a veterinarian clinic that was closed 6 years ago? Like they'll just be able to see that right on Google Maps. So it helps that you do that quick search, which again, we'll dive into an audit here later on in this video, but it helps that you actually take your time to look through the office that you're selecting. Don't just go with the first one that you see, right? So here's some reputable ones that you guys have probably heard of. Maybe you haven't. This is your first time checking this out. You have Opus, you have Regis, you have Alliance, and then you have iPostal. Now, I'm going to give you guys some do's and some don'ts on maybe some examples of how you want them to look and how you don't want them to look. So I'm going to open up, let's go with Regis. I'll open up Regis, and I'm going to show you guys what you want an office to look like and what you don't want an office to look like. I'm over in Regis. Again, this is just as an example of how you would want to do it. It doesn't have to be Regis. We tend to use them quite a bit with our clients. And so let's say that I do Orlando, Florida, which is where we're located right here. So I'm making the example easy because I'm familiar with the area. So right around here, give or take, this is downtown, give or take a little bit of, where it's located. So this is a pretty good looking building right here. I've actually seen this building. You have this right here. You have the Exchange building. Let's see, that's actually open up soon. That's good to know. You have the Bank Tower. Let's do this. That's by Millennium Mall. Okay. Let's do Bank Tower because this is also by downtown. So as you can see, if a bank were to look this up, this looks like an actual place of work, right? Which is what you want. Again, you don't necessarily have to work out of there, but you want that feel for it to look professional. Again, if you were to want to work out of there, this is what it looks like, or this is really what they offer right here. And so, they have the office spaces, they have co-working areas, they have virtual offices, which is what you're going to be getting, and they have meeting rooms. I'll break this down really quickly. So when it comes to office spaces, this is like you can rent out an actual office from there, a legit office that you're maybe doing month to month. So again, they're not the world's biggest offices. It's maybe like the size of a room, but it's enough for just you, maybe a partner, grab a laptop, pull up some chairs and a table, and nicely furnish it, right? So this will be a private office. Co-working is, if you're familiar with a coffee shop, you're working out of the coffee shop facility, or you're working out of the coffee shop and everyone's kind of like just a shared space environment, right? Everyone's sharing the same Wi-Fi. As you can see, it's a lot less. So you have $49 if maybe you just, when you show up, you'll grab a chair. If you want a dedicated desk where it's like it's yours, even though it's in the shared space, remember this is going to vary where you live, and you can always call them to get a quote if maybe you want more than one chair. If it's you and a couple of people working with you in your business, $299 per person. Virtual office address is what you're going to be getting. With these guys right here, you have a business address, they have a virtual office address, and then they have a virtual office address plus. Really the key difference, and you can take your time and read through all of these. I won't do it here, just it's going to make the video longer than it should be. But really with this right here is the business address is you're just getting the address that you can use whenever you're going out to open up an account that you can use to receive mail, right? When you have a virtual office address, sometimes, and again, this is going to vary with the service that you use, sometimes the virtual office package, they're going to include maybe a receptionist, they're going to include maybe a fax number, they're going to include maybe a fax to email. So if you get a fax, it emails it right to you. Sometimes they include mail forwarding, something you want to pay attention to. If you don't want to be constantly driving into the virtual office address, if that's the route that you decide to take, then you may want to get mail forwarding. What this means is every time, maybe if you apply for a couple of things, or maybe if you're running your business, you get your licenses, you get a couple of business credit cards, instead of it getting mailed out to the address of the office and you having to go there and physically pick it up every time, unless that's what you want to do, they can just go ahead and forward it to your address, which would be your home address. That's not going to be public record. So, you'll be safe in that regard. And then lastly is you have your virtual office address plus, which, like anything else, you get the receptionist, you get maybe like you can rent out some of the rooms, certain packages. They'll let you rent out maybe like one of the offices once a month for maybe half the price of what they would typically do. Sometimes they'll give you the room maybe for an hour, or you have like a certain amount of tokens. Again, they don't want this part to be so overbearing, but I at least wanted you to know and kind of see what that looks like. Remember, you can always just go back, take a look at this yourself, and then just look at it on the map. Just me knowing the area, this right here, which is number 3, which is what we're looking at, all like this section right here is flooded with banks, credit unions, from top tier A banks, regional banks, and credit unions. So this will be a really good area to plop an address in. But I do want to show you what maybe I would say like a not so good example would be of this. If it looks anything like these guys right here, like shipping and packing locations, that's not what you want, guys. That is going to raise a red flag with the banks, and it's going to defeat the purpose of why you're even doing. I mean, obviously you're watching this training because you want to learn more about this, but it's going to defeat the whole purpose of you having set up the virtual office address to begin with, right? So as soon as you get it, pay attention to the address that it's pointing to so that it doesn't look like this. Now let's roll right into how having bad business addresses can either get you flagged or denied for credit lines, or even something as simple as opening up an account with the bank of your choice or credit union of your choice. And yes, this again even applies to virtual business addresses like you guys have been seeing. Now, we've already broken down the types of business addresses that you can use, how to set them up, and again, how to use them properly. But what happens when you have a bad business address? Remember what we mentioned earlier, your business application or the way that the bank goes to view your company, it gets downgraded by the financial institutions and the underwriters. This is no good because this makes it, number one, harder for you to get access to the funding that you need and to the working capital that you need to continue to scale your business. And then number 2 is, let's say worst case scenario, you get denied, which again holds back your operations. But let's say you do end up getting approved for something, you end up getting approved for weak limits, which is not what you want because it's not going to help you scale at the speed that you need to scale at. Or number 2, you may not get the best terms, right? Which means higher interest, which means the money's going to get more expensive to you. That's not what you want, especially in this economy as you're trying to grow your operations. Again, you get denied for business credit, but you also get denied for things as simple as a checking account or a savings account. We see it happen all the time when this is set up incorrectly. Your business credit score drops, believe it or not. A lot of people don't know this, but your business credit score drops because since the business is seen as a higher risk due to the location or the type of, or due to the location and or the type of company that's operating it. And so if you have a bad setup to begin with, even if you have the numbers to prove why you're a good business, the fact that the bad setup starts to, or again, the fact that you have a bad setup, the bank starts to view the business as maybe operations isn't as ironclad as it looks, at least at face value, right? Now, again, you could be making all the cash flow in the world, but they're always going to take a look at the book cover first before they actually go in and start reading the content inside of the book, which in this case, it's you, the business owner, how you're running the operations. This tells a lot about a business because they have thousands of data points that they've used based off of businesses being structured incorrectly, the probability of them going delinquent or falling default. Remember, apart from the payment history, one of the biggest data points that the bureaus are going to look at is the location of the business, and they're going to create its strengths on the address validity. Oftentimes, there's going to be scams. This one I do see quite a bit. Scams that are attached when you're renting an address that's linked to, again, that business address, even if you had nothing to do with it. That can get attached to the application whenever you're trying to submit for funding, or sometimes it gets linked to the business credit report. We had a client, this one was actually kind of recent, a couple months back. We had a client where he went through a registered agent, a reputable registered agent, set up the foreign entity, did the whole 9 yards, set up a business address in the state that he was trying to do business in. And the address that the registered agent set up for them, when they went to go Google it, it had like the local media or the local news for that town had that address as previous I'm not sure if it was like a previous almost like a white collar crime, or it was like a scam was going on in the operations. Like, to not get too lost into the weeds, there was a scam going on in that specific business, and so every time that they went to try to just open up a business bank account, like they couldn't even open up a Chase business bank account, just because every time they pulled it up, they would say, "Hey, back in 2018, did your business commit this, this, and this?" And they're saying, "No, dude, like our business just opened up in 2021, right? We're now starting to grow in this sector of the city, and we're trying to expand." And they were saying, "Yeah, we can't take you in because it says here, based off of this publishing and this publishing, that your business actually committed, said crime. So you want to pay attention to that, not just, again, and that's just quick Google search of the address that you're getting. Nothing too fancy, just keep it simple, right? This can happen to any virtual office address company that you pick. So be careful and still run your due diligence. I get this question asked all the time. Which one's the best? Which one's the best? Guys, it can happen to any one of them. Even if you get an address from maybe the virtual office address that you've been using for the last 6 years, if maybe you've been in this game for a minute, sometimes you'll get a faulty address. Have them switch it out for you, or pick a different building location, or pick a different company altogether, right? Now, there's also something known as a graded CMRA, which is a commercial mail receiving agency. Now, these companies, if I'm being honest with you, these are just like these addresses that are attached to these companies. These are just glorified PO boxes. Again, you want your business to be a legitimate place of work, not just a postal service or a storage looking facility, right? These type of addresses are constantly being seen as a cheaper alternative by the banks. You want to spend a little bit of extra money, I would recommend, right, if you want to do this right, on non-CMRA, non-commercial mail receiving agencies, which I'm going to show you exactly what this is here in just a minute. But again, a commercial mail receiving agency, just in layman terms, is a business that's, again, already categorized or graded by the bank that, hey, they're just like a middleman. Like, they're just there to receive mail for this company. This isn't a legit place of work. That's why you want it to be a non-commercial mail receiving agency. You want it to be a legit business address. And so, closing it out, I want to show you guys, I want to gift you this because I think that this will serve you far better than you being out in the blind, not knowing how to do this. I want to show you how you can run a business address audit to make sure that it's a non-commercial mail receiving agency, and to make sure that it's an actual office address that the banks are going to want to, again, upgrade your application, not downgrade it, meaning they're going to penalize you for having that address, and they're actually going to want to do business with your business. I found that there's really 4 reasons why you would want to do this to begin with. First reason is probably the majority of us watching this video right now is you're just scratching your head wondering, why do I keep getting denied for products, whether it's a credit line, business line of credit, maybe an SBA loan that I know I should be getting approved for. I have strong credit. I have good financials. My P&Ls are in place. I actually have employees. I run payroll. I run a legitimate operation, right? Or I am starting my business and I want to make sure that I'm doing it right. And I don't want to shoot myself in the foot, right? That's going to be the main reason, is you're just dotting your I's and crossing your T's. First reason, right? You're trying to mitigate the risk. If you've already been running into the denials, then at this point, you definitely have nothing to lose. You should definitely be doing this. No questions asked. The second reason, which is right here, is you're in the process of completely revamping, restructuring, reclassifying, and resetting up your business, whether it's one that you've had now for 1 year, 10 years, 100 years, right? We have clients across the board, first year in business, 10th year in business. This is one of the first things that we look at. So, hey, where's the business at? And we want to position it in a way that's going to be compelling to the bank, in a way that's fresh, in a way that's fully optimized. Because if not, we're going to get denials, or we're going to get unfavorable credit lines or terms on the products that we do get. Especially if you are in a foreign entity type of setup where you're going to be in an area that you're not too familiar with, you definitely want to be making sure that the address that you're getting is one that's just crystal clear, one that you can rock with, one that's on point. Third reason is you're doing your due diligence to see, maybe you have a business address already, and you're doing your due diligence to see if the business address that you have is either one that's getting screened as a scam, maybe one that has frauds attached to it, maybe negative press. again, your business credit report and your digital footprint is going to inherit that bad data. And so if that's you, then you definitely want to make that change, because I can't tell you how many times once that change is made, floodgates open, credit lines start pouring in, people are off to the races, and now they're scaling their businesses, right? But I want to pause here before going off into the fourth point and kind of like drop my hat here, right? No pun intended. And that's this. I've done other videos on this, and I'm going to quickly touch on it. Whatever you do on one side with the change, you want to do it on the other side. If you're making a change with your business address, then you want to file what's called Form 8822B. That's going to notify the IRS that you want to make that change. Don't stop there. I see this all the time. I'm like, I want to help you out. Don't stop there. You want to go what I call 5 levels deep. What does that mean, Irv? That means that you want to make changes in 5 core areas in your business for any address change, any name changes, any changes in the structure that's going to directly impact the business moving forward. And so the 5 levels is going to be with the IRS. So that's what I call at the federal level. You want to do it at the state level. So the Secretary of State, you want to notify them as well. The Department of State, you want to notify them of the address change. You want to do it at what I call the financial level, which is with the banks, credit unions that you're either already doing business with or plan on doing business with. You want to do it with, I call it like a local or a city level. So if you have licenses in place that you need to make those changes on, they should also be reflecting on there. And then lastly, any press, any media, social media, websites, some states require you to put a publishing for at least 2 publishings out on paper for them to be able to, properly, I say, see that your business has changed its address, right? I know that New York does that, right? And so at that point, once those 2 publishings have been recorded, they then say, okay, we now authorize that your address has been changed, right? Every state is going to be different, so you always want to see what specific publishings or what needs to be done in your state for that change to actually take place, right? So that's at the 5 levels. I'll probably just link that video somewhere in here so that you guys can check it out. And then lastly is this is going to allow you to have the perfect business address, flat out, right? Which is the whole purpose of this video. Now, let's run a quick business address together, shall we? This is how you want to do it. Now, the first place that you want to go, I have it pinned right up here, is you want to go to USPS.com. You can also just go right up here where it says tools. Right here, just get that little name, tools.usps.com. Honestly, guys, you can use by address, you can go by city or state, or you can go by your city or zip code. It's really your prerogative of how you want to set it up. This is how you would do a business address audit. So this is going to be step 1 of 3. For the purpose of this example, again, we'll do by address. You can use any one of these, right? Like we mentioned earlier. This is how we always do it. This is what we tell our clients to do. It's just a lot easier to search. Number 1, or really the second step, but really the first thing you want to do in the second step is going to be depending on where you're at. So if you are a business that's already established and you already have a business address, you can do company name and then fill out the rest of the address. That's if you're doing an audit and you're trying to see if the address that you have is no bueno, right? Like no good, you should swap it out. If you have a brand spanking new business that you're establishing right now and you're just wanting to see, okay, Irv, I'm doing my due diligence, I'm forming my LLC, I'm just getting everything rocking and rolling, or I just got everything rocking and rolling, but I'm trying to pick the right address, then you don't need the company name. You would just go ahead and plug in the address right here of the address that you're looking to get or the address that you maybe just got, right? And then it'll spit back this information right here, which we're going to be breaking down together on what exactly you want to look for. Obviously, for the purpose of keeping this person's stuff, anonymous, of the example that they allowed us to use, we're going to block out their entire entity, like the name, the address, the whole 9 yard. First things first is this right here. You're going to get the address, or really the name of the business that the address is attached to. Sometimes you'd be surprised the name is incorrect. That's like a whole other can of worms on fixing the business name, but sometimes like this information's off, right? But again, all things being equal, let's say that the name is spot on. This is going to be the full address, making sure that there's no PMB number attached to it. Remember what we mentioned earlier, private mailbox number, making sure that it doesn't look like it's a PO box, an actual office location, even if there's a suite, right? Don't confuse suite with PMB. A suite is an actual business address. Miami Gardens, Florida, and then again the zip code, the whole 9 yard, right? Which you'll find down here again. So you want to make sure that all this information is congruent, and it looks and reads how the bank would want to see it based off of the format that we broke down earlier in this training. And then where the big arrow is, where you can't miss, commercial mail receiving agency, you want it to say N for no. Again, you want it to say N for no when you're doing your business address audit, because this means that the USPS, the way that they have it in their system, and when a bank goes to pull from that data, they don't have it regulated, or they don't have it classified, I should say. They don't have it classified as a commercial mail receiving agency. What this means is that it being seen as a non-commercial mail receiving agency looks like a legitimate, viable office location that they can, again, look and see, okay, this is an office address that passes the check, right? Passes the vibe check, so to speak. And so this is an office address that we can actually do business with. That's how you would run the address audit for your business, whether you are a brand new startup or if you are an existing business. Again, if you found value in this content today, I know a lot of you guys were asking, Irv, how do you double check like a business address? How do you make sure it's legit? How do you make sure it's one that the banks aren't going to maybe point their noses down to and say, this is no good? Guys, this is how you do it. I can't tell you how many files we've turned around just with this simple fix right here. If you found value in this content, consider hitting the subscribe button down below. Don't forget that anytime we're posting on here, we're trying to post content that's relevant to what you guys want to see. So drop your questions down in the bottom. Let me know what you guys want to see next. Any bottlenecks, any issues that you're facing in your journey of scaling your business in regards to getting access to business credit. We'll love to see how we can make some content around that in the future. But other than that, I appreciate you guys checking us out. Till next time, everyone, I will see you in the next video. Bye.